talk about that a little bit later.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it says we're live, and I'm happy to introduce to anyone that's going to be watching us in the chat soon. Sunny Boy CW, also known as John Smith, also known as some other names that we can't mention on air.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Just I'm trying to get away from that John Smith name. I got in trouble.
Yeah. He's a troublemaker. Aren't these interesting times? I'm not sure, my friend, whether or not we're going to do our hour-long show without any internet interruptions. When I jumped onto Streamlabs, they put a big sign on saying, due to popular demand of the internet globally, due to a virus and people on the internet, we may experience stuttering.
Oh wow, yeah. I noticed 2 days ago I was calling a few people and call failed. That seemed to be the unfortunately the general consensus for a couple of hours at that time was the calls were failing, overload.
Yeah, so I'm just going to probably interrupt you during the course of our show a couple of times, Carl, just with guys and girls if they comment in the chat. So we've got Wednesday Store in the chat saying hello all. Wednesday Store's also known as Dave.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's different to Dave.
That's Dave.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Dave.
Nice.
Yeah, all these Daves. Dave's an essential worker. I was just having a chat to him earlier, so he's working.
Oh, good.
Despite the lockdown that they're well, I don't think the lockdown that they've got in the UK is anywhere near as stringent as the lockdown we've got here.
No. I mean, that's interesting how you were talking about Simon and his views, because if anything, they should be concerned about their own backyard. Because our lockdown is unprecedented. It's 4 weeks. It's you're confined to your house, your significant other, if you're fortunate to have one, or obviously your family, and that's it. No extended family members, 6 feet apart. And what was the other one? Only 3 or 4 industries open, which is supermarkets, gas stations, and essential work, which would be either hospitals, pharmacies, or courier work, the transportation of goods and medical supplies.
Yeah, or food manufacturing. Building construction is still continuing because if you spring a leak or something happens,
on call sort of work.
Yeah. But I think what we need to understand, my friend, is that you've hit the nail on the head. It's unprecedented. What's kind of scary for us here in New Zealand, guys, is that we were preparing for 4 weeks, and you listen to some of the media alerts, they're talking about extending it. So shit, we could be in lockdown for gosh weeks.
Did so with RNS, the government will pay out the employers to help out with wages?
Don't know.
So you're okay for now?
Yeah.
Okay, I get a small little. Apparently, I qualify. I'm not sure, but a small little fee at being a self-employed individual.
Mm.
Hopefully, Dawn gets that too. It's a one-off sum, but yeah, no. Well, thank God we've got the internet and the computer, and we can utilize our time for good, which is talking about things we like talking about.
Well, yeah. Look, I'm trying to remain positive. It's the second day. I'm bored as heck. Hey, Kubrick Glover. We've got Kubrick Glover in the chat saying g'day to you, Carl. He's always been a keen contributor in the past when you were on regularly there for a while. So, he's a good guy, one of the good guys. in North America.
Yep.
Anyway, so we've got the world affairs ticked off. The topic of the show. So obviously it's a British blues related subject. So I'll be keen for you to give us an introduction on what we're going to talk about.
Oh, well, yeah, Andrew and I talked about this for a while. Obviously, we've talked a lot about, for example, Stones, Beatles, Eric, Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac. We did a series on American guitar players stuff, but we haven't really given, and this particular topic will lead into a 4-week series, given John Mayall the credits or the accolades or the due he's deserved as far as being a band leader, an innovator, and someone that paved the way for legends.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because I was telling Andrew, I just happened to run across a documentary the other day on YouTube for an hour and 10 minutes, and Eric Clapton said, in a roundabout way, he said, I wouldn't be where I am today without John. Yardbirds to Bluesbreakers, that's a gigantic leap, isn't it? I don't think he could have gone from Yardbirds to Cream. I think the Bluesbreakers, because John Mayall had an extensive record collection. So
I think I think you've indicated a very, very critical link there. Yes, and obviously we have the hindsight of history to say, well, look, yes, he went from this band to that band to this band, but because we like to assume some theories, it would have been impossible for him to go from the Yardbirds to Cream completely. Absolutely. So why? Tell us why.
Well, I think that for lack of a better word, John Mayall was a professor, and the band members were students. He was a lieutenant, and the band members were soldiers. He was. You mentioned the word, but before he was a master chef, and the band members were ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with John Mayall, he wasn't the most talented musician, but he was wise in the ways of the world. He was 10 years older than the rest of the guys. He'd done time in the army, so that probably taught him regiment structure.
Big time. Clapton talks about that in his book a couple of times. So when he left the Yardbirds, was wondering what to do, got the phone call from Mayall. Mayall got him to his flat, got him upstairs into a little room, and he spent anywhere from 3 to 4 months getting up in the morning, having a couple of coffees, a couple of cigarettes, and they were listening to, as you said earlier, his extensive blues record collection. And then he was playing, he was mimicking, he was rehearsing, he was copying those licks that he was hearing. So that was his undergraduate course, maybe his bachelor's degree.
And the other thing we've got to give John credit for is he gave them, within that structure and within that, that working relationship, he also gave them a sense of freedom to express themselves within the parameters of being in a band.
Sure.
And when band members came and went, he didn't get all emotional or malicious. He just said, you go about your merry way. So we've got to admire him for that, a professor, a band leader, and a personality.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why I think that particular aspect of his personality was so good, was the fact that he had Eric Clapton, who was considered the guitar god at that time.
Yes.
And then when Clapton left, he had already heard Peter Green. So he was confident anyway when Clapton left or handed his notice in that he was going to get someone that was as good, if not better, to take his place. So he had his first two guitarists were arguably the two best guitarists ever in the world. And so anything else that happened after that, well, was just a, okay.
Yeah, well, it was a breeding ground too. I mean, all these guitar players would have been lost without John, because you can be a great guitar player, but you need a sense of direction. So John Mayall already had a record contract with Decca Records, because I used to own the album, which is quite good. So a lot of people don't know this. The first guitar player, was it Roger Dean? Or
I'll tell you.
And they did quite a neat little song called "Life's Slow Train Crawling Up a Hill." Live at Kluke's Cleek was the first album John Mayall. Is that right?
Yep.
So John was already underway, a record contract. Huey Flint and John McVie were already in the band, I think. So it only made sense for someone like Eric to join.
Yeah, I look, I agree with you, and I don't think we can negate the role that John McVie had early on in that band. We all know that he got fired there a couple of times because he was a little bit independent and he liked the drinking a little bit, and John Mayall, sorry, ran his ship, pretty strictly. It wasn't about the booze. It was certainly about turning up on time, doing a good show for the fans, and earning your money, because he was paying those guys a weekly wage. They were getting paid good money, So that was another issue too about when John McVie got an invitation to join Fleetwood Mac. He was sort of umming and ahhing because he was playing with Mayall, getting a good weekly wage. And if I go and join Fleetwood Mac, what gigs? What what am I going to get?
I think John McVie feared having a job. He was a tax collector and accountant for a very short term.
Yeah,
he did not want to go back to a suit and tie in an office.
No.
So yeah. No, it would have been interesting to be around that, because the likes of your Peter Greens and possibly your Mick Taylors would have been in that audience too. Like, one day I'll be there,
Well, absolutely.
So John Mayall would have been the Muddy Waters or the Howling Wolf of London.
Well, absolutely. Peter Green used to go and watch Clapton play. He was standing there in the audience watching Clapton, looking at his licks, working out what he was doing, looking at his gear setup, and Mick Taylor, the same thing. Mick Taylor was doing the same thing as well, and then all of a sudden they're in this band.
Yeah. Well, and three amazing guitar players. I mean, if people said it was like a school. I was on that John Mayall documentary. Eric did say that he did join for selfish reasons. He knew that he wasn't going to be in that band forever. I think Eric from day one knew he was talented and was very ambitious.
Well, he was a blues purist, and he understood that he bent the stick too far. He was in the Yardbirds, and they recorded that song "For Your Love," and he was anti-pop. He was, clearly he was, anti-pop. Didn't want to be part of that scene. Saw himself as a blues purist, but he wasn't alone in that. There were a lot of English cats who had that view, didn't they? Peter Green, Steve Winwood, a lot of these guys, they were listening to this blues. Keith Richards, Mick Jagger, they wanted to get this out. They were listening to this music that had power, authenticity, emotion, excitement. It was almost religious.
Yes. Yeah. They were. It was a new thing. B, it was powerful, and it was a little secret society within a music society importing these records. Have you heard this lick? Have you heard this song? And the guys, fortunately, coming to tour live would have been an amazing experience with the American Folk Blues Festival in Europe. So
wow,
it would have been very, very exciting time.
Wow.
And John Mayall, once again, basically put everybody in line, organised everybody. We're going to do the set list. We're going to do these songs. You can sing if you want, Eric. You can sing you can do your own vocal. I'll let you. That is my band. Hey, Mike Vernon, Eric wants to play his amp at 10. Okay, that's what we do live. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Apparently the engineers, went up to Eric and said, we can't do that, and he said, no, this is what I'm doing. And then went up to the leader of the band and said, look, we've never done this before. And he said, well, we just do what he wants. Yeah.
I was listening to this bootleg of Fabulous Thunderbirds when their first album came out and they're on tour.
Yeah.
And their live sound sounded just like the record, just like Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Really?
So, yeah, I got a funny feeling that that Blues Breakers album, the Beano album, would have been their live set and probably their live sound.
Definitely. Yeah. That's exactly, you've hit the nail on the head. So that's exactly how Clapton's described it in his biography. That basically was their set. They just went in there and played those songs. 20-year-old playing Hideaway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And the amount of excitement they would have created. A small club packed, no effects, tube amps, fairly tight band, reverb, echo, feedback. Just would have been, these guys were trying to emulate that purest sound.
So can I ask you? Can I just ask you a question? So in '66, you had this album. You had this album come out. Okay.
Yep.
You had the Beatles with Revolver. What did the Stones release in '66?
Aftermath.
Okay, right. So 3 albums, completely different sounds, different tones.
No blues on Aftermath.
It's just phenomenal, the difference between those albums.
Yep. Yeah, the Stones started out bluesy and R&B, and then they tried to start to get that singer-songwriter Bob Dylan sound. The Beatles were never much blues, so the Blues Breakers would have been a bit like that famous album, the Hoodoo Man Blues, Junior Wells and Buddy Guy. Probably the first authentic blues album in England ever.
Wow.
A bona fide working blues band. Probably not only the first, but maybe the greatest one of all time.
Well, certainly in the top 3 of blues albums, in my opinion. In my top 3.
Yeah, as far as a bona fide, not in the world, but in England, just in England. That particular album, you open up with All Your Love. So you got Otis Rush, Robert Johnson, It Ain't Right, Little Walter cover. Obviously, John does about 3 or 4 of his songs.
Double Crossing Man's absolutely brilliant. The guitar solo on that is just fantastic. And then for guitar nerds, you're talking about the songs. Then you've got the tone, which we've spoken about before on half a dozen programs, Carl. But that tone, what is it? The Marshall Gibson combination. That's what influenced everybody.
To this day, you've got bands on stage sounding quite not well, sounding like it, not the same, but like it. Every time Slash does a solo, there's a hint of Eric Clapton in there from the Bluesbreaker in there.
The first time I heard Hideaway, and I heard that natural overdrive, and it's interesting because I didn't know anything about natural overdrive or anything like that, but until later on. But it's interesting when you hear that, you know that it's just natural. You're listening to some natural overdrive going on. There's nothing manufactured. There's no studio manipulation going on. It's just
No.
it's just the guitar through the amplifier, and it's just it's spellbinding. I never forget the first time I heard it. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, Double Crossing Time, that solo was probably the top 10, maybe top 20 solos of all time. The feedback, the vibrato, the double stops, the double slurs. I'm talking guitar nerd talk now. The slides, the glistening, the glistens, whatever they're called. He does it all. And it would have been pretty scary to not only play that, but to hear it for the first time. Eric. Yeah, I don't think Eric could play like that ever again. I mean, obviously he's very fluid, he's very technical now, but everything seemed to align on that particular album.
Oh, we can't underestimate Mike Vernon's role as a Decca producer and engineer. Hey, Arvin, good to see you, buddy. Yeah.
He's quite an interesting guy, Mike Vernon. He looks like a surfer, and he's got the quite squeaky voice, eh?
Yeah. Well, he's
quite young looking for an older guy, and he's very intense,
driven, focused.
Yeah. That's probably what. Yeah. He was the man, eh? He not only was he there then, but he was carried on with John Mayall all through, I think, and then went with Fleetwood Mac. So
well, he's the guy that they're setting up the studio for Mayall's second album, and they're getting it all ready, and the band comes in, and Vernon says to John, where's Eric? And he goes, oh, he's not in the band anymore. And they apparently dropped their jaws and said, oh, really? Oh, shit, this is no good. And then Mayall turned around and said, oh, we've got someone better. And Vernon's going, better than Eric Clapton? So they were all scratching their heads just going, what's going on here? Peter Green came in, unassuming North London guy, plugs his guitar in, and then after about 30 seconds, they all look at each other and go, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if you compare those two albums and as much as they are alike, they're completely different.
Hey, great Vanzini.
Peter, to this day, will still humble himself to say Eric is the man, but Peter Green took it to a slightly other, not a better level, but a different level.
I think what Eric did
would be supernatural.
Yeah, for me, Eric brought this this room perspective. He brought the boom. He brought this fuzz. He brought this natural overdrive. Filled up the room with sound. What Peter Green did on that second album with John Mayall, with the supernatural and the stumble, is he just pierced through this sound, this noise, and just took it up, another degree with that, with the sharpness, with some sparkle. Yeah.
A lot more reverb. That nasal tone hadn't been invented then yet, eh?
No,
it came a bit later.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the nasal tone. So similar but different. So yeah, no, far out. I love those two out. Well, Yeah, I love most of them. Love most of the work. I've never actually listened to the Mick Taylor one. Is it any good?
Crusade.
Why? Crusade.
Yeah, it's it's phenomenal.
Oh, really? I'll have to listen to it one day. Yeah, and those original British pressings of those albums are worth a fortune. So we mentioned before, did John make much money? Well, he must have, because they've reissued them so many times. So yeah.
So just hold on. Arvin's asking a question about. He's asking, who did Peter Green play with before he joined John Mayall? And I'm just
Was it someone Peter Barden,
Peter,
or
Pete Bardens, who's got a interesting album out. Peter Bardens, yeah, Shotgun Express. Just trying to find it. All this information we've got. Yeah, Peter Bardens.
It was a bit like was it Eric and the Roosters, Eric Clapton and the Rooster Band?
Yeah. Just
It would have been some good. They would have,
pub bands.
They would, yeah. They would have been give them a slight foundation. But once again, we see, and we want to get back to John Mayall.
So I just want to interrupt you, Carl. So Peter Bardens' Lunars is the name of the band that he was playing, and then he was playing in a band before that called the Tridents when he was playing bass. So I think we have to remember that Peter Green started out as a bass player.
Yeah.
Anyway, and Kubrick Lover's asking about Mick Taylor, but we'll get to Mick Taylor maybe later on, if not in this show. Kubrick Lover, maybe in the next one. So anyway, mate, I interrupted you. Carry on.
Oh, so there's quite a good little. So you got these. This seems to be a pattern. You've got these Erics, your Peter Greens, your Mick Taylors, all starting out with these cover bands, school bands, playing on the weekends, bands, jumping up to John Mayall, and then their level of playing just, they might have been pretty good in their previous band, but we can only assume that their level of playing and professionalism went through the roof. Because after they leave, they go into bands that become multi-platinum.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question. I watched a documentary the other night about Britpop, about Oasis, Blur, and these other bands I can't quite remember. But anyway, it was an interesting documentary. And I made a connection with what one of the commentators on the program was talking about. He said that Oasis were driven right from the word go. They were from Manchester. They were a working class band, and they were determined to use music to get out of their, working class predicament, to earn some money. So when you look at Peter Green, working class, Mick Taylor, working class, Eric Clapton, working class. So do you think the fact that these guys were working class guys, they could see music as a vehicle for them to get out of being a plasterer, a butcher, a lorry driver? Yeah.
Well, yeah, who wouldn't? I mean the trappings of doing what you love, meeting people, the girls, the potential money, cutting albums, meeting your idols. It would have been a dream for any musician to have that invitation. There's an unfortunate thing in America right now with a lot of these rappers. It's like a chance for them to get out of the ghetto. One song, $1 million, driving a Bentley, living in a mention. But I think you're right. I mean, that we talk about this Black Sabbath working class. I don't think Tony wanted to be in a steel mill. 8 hours a day, losing fingers.
Replying to Kubrick Glover in the chat, he's asking, is John Mayall alive? And I'm just going to say yes. Didn't he celebrate his 80th birthday recently?
I think he's older than that, 86.
Was
he
it?
was born in 33 or something.
Okay. So maybe it was his 85th then. Okay.
Yeah.
So much for being a British blues nut.
Oh, no, he might be 80. He can't be. If Eric Clapton's 75.
75, 74, yep.
Because John was 10 years older.
Well, Google never lies, does it? So I'll Google it. Let's have a look. Born in 33.
77.
86.
87.
So it was his 85th birthday last year. And I said 80. So I was 5 years out. Forgive me, Kubrick Glover. Forgive me, Carl.
He must have good genes, that guy.
Yeah, phenomenal. 85. So yeah, he was 10 years older than Clapton. So Clapton's 75. Yep.
Wow. Shit, the years have gone by. Yeah. Well, can you imagine, you're surrounded by people your own age. You've been in bands with people your own age. And then you step up into a band with a band leader with a record contract who's 10 years older. That's automatically going to make you play better. Because this is real. This is the real deal. This ain't Disneyland anymore. This guy's...
Well, definitely. And again, I suppose, I've got to back up your statement by Clapton himself, in his biography that I've read many times. He agrees with you. That time that he spent in John Mayall's band gave him the experience, but also the ability and the confidence to play these licks. Because you have to remember that when he was in the Yardbirds, and they were part of that early part of the British blues phenomena, he didn't get a lot of support in that band. You had the bass player Samuel Smith, who didn't like him. You had Chris, the other, that they didn't like him because of his class background. He was a little bit different. He wasn't posh, completely posh like the rest of the guys.
Oh, were they all Londoners? Were they?
Yeah. So he didn't get the support that he obviously needed to develop as a guitar player that he got from John Mayall.
Well, the other thing too was, and I'm pretty sure Chris Dreyer is an okay guitar player in his own right, but and I've had this situation before, and Keith's thinking is totally different, and so with Iron Maiden and stuff. But Iron Maiden having 3 guitar players, but Eric's the sort of guy that he's so good at that particular stage. For him to blossom, he needed to be just playing by himself.
Yeah.
John Mayall gave him that platform to do that. Yeah. And then obviously Cream, once again, no second guitar player.
Yeah, so going back to the point that you made earlier, the other 2 guys in Cream were classically trained jazz musicians. Okay, so they knew the theory, didn't they? They knew timing. They were playing with jazz musicians. So for Eric Clapton to even be in the room with these guys who were at a higher level when it came to the theory from music, he had to have been in John Mayall's Blues Breakers. He couldn't have gone into that situation straight from the Yardbirds. So I think your point about John Mayall's experience for Clapton and what that did as far as developing the British blues movement for the next 5 or 6 years, is a key point.
So Eric joined in '65. They had a slight falling out. Peter covered for him, and then Eric came back and recorded the album. Is that right?
Yeah. So Eric buggered off with the Glads to go to Greece, because they thought they were going to do something over there, but that didn't work.
Yeah.
So
was Eric and John Mayall's band for obviously one album, but a total of a year and a half?
Yeah, a year and a half.
Okay.
But what you have to remember too, that they did a lot of gigging. So it's interesting that you talk about the fact that they did one album. We can't forget that they were gigging. So as you know, being a blues nut, they were gigging on Monday nights. Here in New Zealand, going out to a show on a Monday night, no one did that for a long, long time. But in the UK, going out on a Sunday night at the pub and watching a local band, they'd been doing that for a long, long time. So they were playing Sunday nights. They were playing Sunday afternoon shows. They were doing up to 5 to 10 gigs a week, Carl. That's a lot of gigs.
Yep. Well, the Rolling Stones were doing an afternoon show, then an evening show.
Yeah.
You know? So we had the population and the country to support it. So.
No, I just want to jump in and interrupt you. So Arvin's saying that Mayall used to be a drinker too. If he was a drinker, he gave up really, really early because he was a teetotaler, wasn't he? He didn't drink.
I think the documentary I saw, he started drinking late, like about when he got to California, about 68.
Ah, yes, you're right. Yes.
And then he gave up. He did it hardcore for about 12 years and then gave up about 1980, I think. Or
it's a bit like Charlie Watts, became a heroin addict when everyone else had kicked it 30 years late.
When it was cool in the early 70s, he was doing it when everybody was Mick Jagger was wearing purple suits and Eric Clapton had his hair long and that bob cut. The wrong time. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Apparently he was out of it on that Dirty Work cover.
So was his drinking a result of the fire that he had?
Possibly, yeah. I'm not sure. Because quite interesting. You had the Live at Kluk's Cleek, which is the first album, and then obviously with Eric joining. So Eric, they must have been pumping Eric Clapton up because they said John Mayall's blues band featuring Eric Clapton.
Oh, definitely. So what we have to remember is that a lot of people, and it's been described by Mayall as well. And incidentally, I've just downloaded his biography that came out last year, so I'm set to read that over the next 4 or 5 weeks. So I'll keep you in touch with anything that I find interesting. But what's interesting is that John Mayall says it himself. People would come to the gigs, and half the audience would be standing there in front of Eric Clapton, watching Eric Clapton, and apparently that started back when he was a Yardbird, that because that wasn't another reason too that pissed off the other Yardbirds. All these people were coming in there, wanted to stand on Eric's side of the stage and look at Eric Clapton, and
wow, he must have
professional rivalries and bands.
Oh yeah, you Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne. You had Mick Jagger and Brian Jones. You had Aerosmith, definitely rivalry, the Oasis brothers, one writes the songs, one's the singer, but you have a power trip going on. Eagles, Joe Walsh, if I went to an Eagles concert, I'd be watching Joe Walsh, not the other guys.
So do you think the bands that survive these personality tussles, do you think it's because they've made peace, or one party has basically won the battle and the other guy or the other parties have said, okay, well, I'm better to be part of it than leave?
Well, probably a combination of a couple of things, possibly maturity, and the other thing is unfortunately money.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Money's got to be a big part of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can have the biggest ego in the world, but if there's a star in your band and that star's selling records and selling out shows, then
You
take
gotta
it or leave it.
Yeah. So Kubrick Lover is saying, have you heard the rumor how Keith Richards goes to somewhere in Europe to get his body cleaned because of all the yeah. So apparently he went to Switzerland to get a blood transfusion. So that was a big rumor, and if you were a Stones fan, you believed that and you propagated that rumor for a long time until you realized Keith said, well, actually, I just went there for the chocolate.
No, skiing lessons.
Skiing lessons.
Yeah. Oh no, they're all those British musicians. Definitely could tell you a few stories. You're exactly right. But interesting. So the first album, Glyver Klukes Kleek, the second album, the famous Beano album, then Hard Road. Did Mick Taylor do 2 albums, A Crusade and Bare Wires?
Oh, look, I can't answer that question. I certainly know Crusade.
I think he did 2 albums, and then after Mick left, I think then John Mayall packed his bags and went to California.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit like Paul Butterfield in a way, and they're quite close, those two guys. After Mike Bloomfield left, Paul got into different arrangements, bigger horn sections and funk, and John Mayall followed that natural progression of, like one album he just did all the instruments himself. Another album he did jazz fusion, which was
he went Earth Daddy, didn't he? He grew his hair and he grabbed the saw and he cut the Stratocaster body down to basically nothing. He
enjoyed turquoise jewelry.
Yeah, and he had a harmonica bandiola around him, so and wearing bare feet. So
a smelly hippie.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly went down that road and path. Yeah.
Hard road.
Because if you've got a road, you got to take a car. Yeah. Okay, so he went down that mountain track, but
maybe his personality suited California. You mentioned the long hair. I think there's an album cover. I think he's on the back where he's like, looks like he's had a peace pipe, sitting on a hill, turquoise jewelry. Kind of almost like Davy Crockett, almost like wearing the clothes of the original Pilgrims in the front on the frontier.
Yeah.
In America, remember that?
Yeah. So Arvin's saying it's good that these guys can pull themselves out of the fire before they damage their health. So there's hope for everyone. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Great Vanzini is saying Butterfield went to Crabshaw LP.
Okay. Yeah. Or Paul Butterfield did they did an EP. They did about 4 songs. Paul Butterfield flew to London and jammed with John Mayall. So they're pretty tight, those two. But yeah, I really admire and respect John. A lot of people put him down because of his nasally voice. He's a little bit awkward looking, but he's quite selfless, I think. He took a back seat to promote a lot of people. Because not only the guitar players in his band, but other players in his band flourished too. You know, the John McVie, I think Mick Fleetwood had a little go, didn't he, in there?
Mick Fleetwood, Jack Bruce,
Yep.
Coco Montoya.
Yep.
Then you've got a lot of these English young cats. A guy called Ollie Brown, Eric Strakel. You know, these other guys now that are just phenomenal.
Oh, really, really, really cool. Really cool to see him. You know, have that role. Looking back, I mean, I when I was a kid, I didn't appreciate him as much as I do him now, because it was all about Eric, it was all about Peter, it was all about Mick Taylor, it was all about the guitar, it was all about the sound, the tone. But as you get older, you realise, looking back, how important he was.
Oh, I agree with you.
Like a coach like Tom Brady, and you got that Balkonich guy.
Yep.
Tom Brady's obviously the star in 42 and winning Super Bowls. Who was the guy that moulded him? You know.
Yeah. All I ever gave a damn about was Peter Green too. You know, Mick Taylor, Eric Clapton. That's all I gave a damn about, and I wasn't interested in the bass player or Ashley Dunbar. But it wasn't until we got a little bit older, and also, you know, information became available. You have to remember too, you know, when we were young guys, we only had record covers for information. We had guys who worked in record stores to give us information, and music magazines, you know, or guitar magazines. So there wasn't a lot of information out there. You know, you can pick up your device now, and in 30 seconds, you can download 20 blues books or biographies and be inundated with experiences and histories of British blues. You can sit there and lock yourself in your room for 4 weeks and just knock yourself out with information. But we didn't have that information back then. And I'm putting that into perspective, because when I got this information and started reading about John Mayall and his responsibility, and I say that because it was a responsibility that he had, to gel these guys together. And certainly there were some selfish motives, because we all have to earn a living, you know, and
yep.
he needed to make a living, loved the music. We also have to remember that too, Carl, that he was a blues nut. He loved the blues, loved it.
Absolutely. And it's a bit like, I mean, obviously, I think you're a little bit older than me. When I was at Robertson Sinclair, and you took me under my wing as a salesperson and said, you know, if you do leave, I would like to give you some great tips. And I'm forever to this day fortunate about that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's what you have. That's what you have to do in life.
Yeah. You know, I agree with you. I don't think that we can underestimate the role that John Mayall had in pushing that British blues scene, and incidentally probably the whole British rock scene in the 70s too, because obviously the British blues scene gave birth to the Deep Purple, you know, scene. You know, that's definitely.
I was thinking about what you said about why did the blues scene stop in '69?
Yeah.
Did you want me to answer that?
Okay, so I'll just I'll give you a bit of I'll do a bit of an introduction, because we've got some guys in the chat here. So guys in the chat, yesterday I was having a chat with Carl, and we were talking about British blues, and I asked him the question about the British blues scene only lasting for about 3 years.
Yep.
Why did it end so quickly? So if you guys want to give us your opinions in the chat while Carl tells us, because he didn't answer the question, so he kept it for the show.
It's only my
opinion. So give me your opinion. Give us your opinion.
Well, there was that famous was it Levi Jeans, or that famous ad, that campaign they did in the 80s or 90s with the good-looking white guy in the jeans and Muddy Waters song "Managed Boy."
Oh,
And then they
that's
even
Brad
wrote a
Pitt.
song about.
Brad Pitt.
Sorry,
Brad Pitt. Yeah.
And the slogan was "Blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll." So it was only natural for your blues guys to. Eric Clapton went to Cream, and then you can pretty much call him a bit of a rock and roller in the 70s. Cream was still kind of bluesy and jazzy, but Peter Green went to Fleetwood Mac. There was definitely a lot of rock and roll before he disappeared. Mick Taylor, blues guy, went to Rolling Stones, naturally the greatest rock and roll band in the world. Blues is great, but rock sells out stadiums. There's a beat, there's a faster beat and excitement, and humans were always pushing to go louder or a bit faster. That's my theory. However, Rolling Stones went full circle. All these bands go full circle. They always go back to the blues, either a blues tribute album or at least playing 2 to 4%. But they always
this is the band that's the band that ended the British blues boom. The Rolling Stones.
That's your theory. That's your theory.
Well, no, I'm agreeing with you, because you've basically said that in a roundabout kind of way. You know, rock and roll. You know, the Rolling Stones came along. You know, and you know, rock and roll.
But hey, but you brought up a good point, because I never really thought about that. I just thought that these guys get a taste from the crowds get bigger, the excitement comes, and all of a sudden, you know, like Jeremy Spencer, you know, the shuffle turns into a boogie, turns into a bit faster. Yeah, but maybe you're right.
We can blame the Rolling Stones.
Maybe I never thought that's a good point. The Rolling Stones came along. So 68 was Jumping Jack Flash, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was it then, wasn't it?
Beggars Banquet. Supernatural Blues came on the scene and just basically changed it completely. What's really interesting, though, and I've mentioned it before a couple of times, you look at the Beatles, for example. The Beatles, John Lennon said some kind of derogatory comments about the British blues scene. He didn't like it. You know, he thought that it was, you know, stuck in time. You know, it was, you know, it wasn't in vogue. It wasn't like at the point of production like the Beatles were, you know. And if you have a look at the band that they did, that he got together on the Rolling Stones circus.
Rock and Roll Circus.
What's the name of the band? Dirty Mac. The Dirty Mac.
Yeah.
So you know, that's
and
a little.
What's the songs that he almost ate some humble pie, didn't he? Your Blues and
Yeah. So
the set consisted of about 3 blues songs, didn't it?
That's correct. Well, you know, because he had Eric Clapton playing guitar, obviously, and who was on bass, you know, Keith Richards. Interesting, because you know, we have to remember that some of the other bands that we love at the time, kind of didn't like that British blues scene. You know, they were quite sort of like vocal. If they weren't vocal, kind of sent out signals that you know, they didn't quite dig what they were trying to do.
Well, the blues is a survivor, because we talked about this before with certain bands like Dave Clark 5, During the Pacemakers, quite a few of those bands. After when Bob Dylan came on the scene and the psychedelia came on the scene, and the blues sort of kept going. First of all, those bands were never blues bands, and they never got so that Brit pop / R&B survived to a point, then it stopped completely about 67. So if you want to be in a band and you want to survive, it pays to know the blues first, because that'll get you through any time.
And that's why the blues will always be popular in some form or another, because it's easy to play. Everyone knows how to do a 12-bar blues shuffle. You just need to know what key. Kubrick Lovers mentioned something quite interesting in the chat, Carl. The Who completely blew the Stones away. So yeah, that's why they didn't release that. That film. And what's really interesting about that film too, there's another reason why they didn't release it. You look at Brian Jones's performance on that film. It's atrocious. It's, he's standing there. He can barely move with the. It's just it's sad.
Yeah. Oh, it's like I watch it and it's frustrating, because I know he's doing a lot of good work on those early albums, and he gets often overlooked, but his sound is buried because they have that beautiful interweaving going on, and he's actually done quite a lot of clever guitar playing that people forget about. But the other thing that people don't realize on that Rolling Stone Rock and Roll Circus, because I read a book on it, is it was filmed over either 2 or 3 days or 2 days, and the Stones were last, and they had no sleep.
Yeah.
And I think it was a 24-hour set. So it was a lot of fun, and you had a lot of guest acts and models and international people, and it was. I've got a book somewhere. I hope I still have it, all the photos. But the Rolling Stones were played last.
So the Rolling Stones, on hindsight, should have played first. But yeah.
Or maybe they didn't have the money, or just didn't realize. Maybe just took a break, did it over 2 days.
Yeah, but yeah, if anyone's interested, if they don't have the DVD copy, you can download it. It's on iTunes anyway. It's worth watching, because
I personally think that sound's been doctored with the Stones performance. Like Keith's doing all this clever work, but it doesn't match his fingers on the guitar board. My opinion.
I'll go back and rewatch it, because I've got plenty of time at my hands for the next 4 weeks, and get back to you on that. But
you can't always get what you want.
I wouldn't be surprised. If they have gone and re-engineered or re-edited it. But yeah.
But apparently Brian, because all the life had been sucked out of him, the court cases, the drugs, his band had dwindled away, the direction was gone. But that's why No Expectations will always forever be a haunting song, but B, closely related to blues and Stones and Brian. He pulled it all together for that song, didn't he? Did the slide.
Oh, sure. No, that's a classic. It's a classic. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, because
I was in his corner. I actually cried when I was a kid watching that, because I was a big Stones guy, a big Brian Jones nut at the time. And I had a tear. I was 15, had a tear in my eye watching, because I knew he'd die about 6 months later, but just seeing this guy just fade away.
Yeah. It's amazing. I 50% of me admires him for turning up, for the gigs. Towards the end there, and then you just look at the fact that could he have helped himself a bit more? But that's another show. That's another show. But I just want to reiterate with what Kubrick Glover said. Part one of the reason why they didn't release it is that the Who blew them away, but also that dreary performance by Brian Jones.
Absolutely.
Meant that they weren't going to release it. Tragedy.
Well, definitely. Mick and Keith have big egos, they don't want to be. If it's their show and they're top of the bill,
Oh yeah.
They don't want to be. They don't want to be second or third.
No.
I mean,
And
I don't have much of an ego, but I would definitely be in the same boat. I'd be like, oh, let's put that on the shelf for a few years, or let's not release it at all.
well, when you consider what we have to go back in time and who was the hottest band in the world in 69, 70, 71, 72.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Rolling,
Well, Who
Rolling
were no
Stones.
slouch, but they're just a totally different sound, eh?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know, they weren't blues
Yeah.
based. They were very, very rock, very opera.
They were
Like
mods.
Queen, I guess.
Yeah. Good analogy. Yeah. They were. Yeah. That's a good comparison. Yeah.
Rock opera.
Yeah.
Very, very, very English. Very. Yeah, it's actually a good point. Maybe Meatloaf kind of copied off that. The very dramatic. But
Yeah,
but
that's an English thing too. Being dramatic, that's a bit of theatre. That's that's pretty.
But I tell you what, Pete Townsend will tell you this till the day he dies. And as much as he loves his band, he's a Stones guy. His idol was Keith Richards.
Oh yeah.
The windmill. He thought that was part of Keith's act. He didn't realize that Keith was just warming up. Just doing a Richie Simmons. What's that? Who was that aerobics guy?
Richard Simmons.
Yeah, that's him. Keith was just warming up, and then what's his name? Pete Townsend incorporated it as part of his act, and the crowd loved it. The world loved it. But really good. Hey, my phone's about to die.
All right, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah. If I plug it in, this what's it called? So if I get 100% juice on this phone, fully charged, I get about an hour and 20 minutes max. So okay. How long have we been going? About an hour?
We've been going for an hour, which is about what you said. Good. So I look forward in a couple of days to do another show with you because you ain't going nowhere, nor am I.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to maybe tell the audience, if there is any audience, I'd like to do a R&B series of British R&B guys, namely the Animals.
Yeah.
Who are as passionate about the blues as the rest of them. Spencer Davis, which obviously had Stevie Winwood. The Zombies, who I think don't get enough credit. And last, Van Morrison. I think that would be probably the four biggest R&B bands, bar the Stones and the Beatles.
Okay, well, I look forward to catching up with you over the next couple of days, spending an hour talking about as much as we can in relation to those bands. Look forward to it.
Well, I mean, we talked about blues, R&B, then rock. I mean, I won't go too deep into the connection, but Spencer Davis, Stevie Winwood, Blind Faith, Traffic, them, Van Morrison, Astral Weeks, California Sound, an amazing solo career.
Wow.
Animals, Eric Burdon, the band called War. Is it War? California Sound.
Yeah.
And then Zombies had an album called, did some great music, then had an album called, I've forgotten what it's called, it came out in 1967, or something about the Oracle or something.
Okay. So Arvin's agreeing with you. He's saying yes, good plan. Yeah. So Arvin's on board.
So there's an album that came out in 1967 by the Zombies, which is a psychedelic masterpiece. So the connection I'm making with these four bands is R&B, blues, Californian sound, rock, just incredible paths and how they intertwine. And those bands to this day, those bands are still going to this day.
Interesting how these British guys managed to take what's happening over in America again, that psychedelic scene, repackage it, and then give it back to them in another format. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting.
big time.
The Californian sound, just taking that on board and just, yeah.
And your American film directors, I don't know how many times they've used House of the Rising Sun or She's Not There or Can't You Hear Me Knocking, all these British songs in their movies, Brown Eyed Girl.
So Kubrick Lover's asking what's the time over here. So Kubrick Lover, it's 3:55 Friday afternoon here. Yep.
Yeah.
So great Vanzini's Odyssey.
Where's he based?
In America. So
okay, yeah.
So,
Odyssey
so
and
great Vanzini's saying yes, Odyssey and Oracle.
Yeah, it's a it goes for a fortune. It's a psychedelic masterpiece.
Wow.
So
really?
Cutting edge. At that particular stage, it was cutting edge. The album cover, the artwork, the music.
So the album's a fortune, the original pressings.
Yeah. On a
Is that because they didn't expect them to sell as many as they did?
I think at the time it was overlooked, and then everybody rediscovered it like they do, and there weren't many in print because everyone overlooked it.
Wow.
And so a lot of these albums, Astral Weeks was the same. I've got the original Astral Weeks. An acoustic jazz masterpiece that the record company didn't want because there was no hit songs.
I never forget the first time we listened to that. It was during an Easter weekend, and it was bad weather, and I was there with a few friends.
Oh, nice.
Doing a few things that probably young guys like to do, and just listening to that album. I think it was on rotation 5 or 6 times. It was phenomenal.
Madam George, yeah, unbelievable, and it's sort of album that's so far ahead of its time. In 100 or 200 years, hybrid alien humans will be listening to it thinking, "Wow, what is this?"
So, have you got an original pressing?
Yeah, I have. This is the beauty about never giving up. I had an original pressing, got broke, had no money, sold it for $300 American, which converted about 450 New Zealand dollars.
Wow.
Never gave up, and then got another copy again.
Did you pick that up when you were in the States or here?
I picked up the first copy in the States and then picked up my second copy when I was here. So unbelievable. Yeah, the music's unreal. You got certain people who are not audiophiles who can appreciate the music, who don't have a musical bone in their body. They just know it's good. That's how good it is.
So I'm just looking through here at the songs on Odyssey and Oracle. So it's been years since I've heard that song. I'm going to play that on Spotify when we finish the show. Changes, I Want Her, She Wants Me, Butcher's Tale, Friends of Mine, Time of the Season. Came out in '68, mate. It's just fantastic, isn't it?
Well, Time of the Season's just there, break out that big dun 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 dun. Just beautiful.
Just hold on, I'm trying to get the cover. Was it going to do it for me? Not. So this is the cover for you guys in the chat if you haven't seen it. So it certainly tells you
what's going on.
What's going on?
Jimi Hendrix.
And so Arvin's agreeing with you. Astral Weeks is great bad weather music.
Oh yeah. Well, it was a bit like the album The Band. Most albums start out with a rock and roll song. Astral Weeks, it was a bit like The Band. It starts out with a slow morning song.
Vanzini's got it too. Well, I have it. They had broken up by the time it was released.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's right. Chris White on bass. Yeah, my friend, thank you for reminding me. I'm going to go and listen to that. That's just it's been a long time since I've listened to that album. And Astral Weeks.
Well, because if you listen to the early Zombies, they did Got My Mojo Working and R&B and blues songs, and then they come up with the masterpiece.
Wow.
So Animals the same. Eric Burdon, Spencer Davis.
Wow.
Stevie Winwood was on those. Was a 15-year-old guitar player playing Stevie's blues.
Wow.
So that's why we're going to talk about these guys.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So maybe next week, it's up to you. You want to start with or next 2 days or 3 days or whenever. You want to start with the Animals or maybe Spencer Davis?
Oh,
or the Zombies or them.
Well, you're going to lead the conversation, so you tell us what you want to lead with, and everyone in the chat will do our homework.
The audience, or maybe ask the audience if they're curious about.
Right. Oh, okay. Very democratic of you. Okay, guys in the chat, tell us what you want Carl to begin the next series on. The Animals, the Zombies, or Spencer Davis. Or Astral Weeks.
Them.
So Great Vanzini is saying that he was an early hero on bass of his. That's Chris White. Yeah, phenomenal bass player. Yeah, bassist, phenomenal bassist. So I'm just waiting for the guys in the chat to make their decision. If you can tell us what you want.
The poll has come back. The poll numbers have come back.
Is it? Are we going to begin with them, Spencer Davis Group, the Zombies, or the Animals? Any of the above sounds good to me. That's what. Okay, so Kubrick Lover's saying Zombies. And then he's saying Zombies and Animals. And Vanzini is saying Chris White wrote Hold Your Head Up High for Argent.
Oh,
wow.
Yes, of course. Which turned out to be a rock band, Argent.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe do Zombies, because Zombies is a bit of a different twist. They were R&B and blues based, and then they went to psychedelia and then rock, prog rock.
Okay. So, okay. I'm digging that. Yeah. Okay. Leave the charge.
Zombies is on a weird tangent, but it still relates back to the blues.
Chaz Chandler was so Great Vanzini's got he's nailing it, man. Chaz Chandler was his other hero, so you can't go wrong with that.
Mm.
So Vanzini must be a bassist, obviously.
well, these bands, whether we like it or not, in their own unique way, were giants.
Yeah,
Santana. I won't give it away too much, but that song "She's Not There." You know how Santana kind of basically made Black Magic Woman their theme song.
Yes.
Well, their second biggest, besides Soul Sacrifice and a few other songs, was "She's Not There," their own version of that one.
Yes.
Have you ever heard Santana do "She's Not There"?
It's phenomenal.
It's amazing. So next time we do the show, let's give Zombies what they deserve, their credit.
Okay then. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. I remember being probably 12 or 13, listening to that album, that song for years on the radio, because I'm a product of my time, so it was always on 1ZH. And then when you start listening to music seriously, when you're about 12 or 13, you start listening to guitar music, and then you actually listen to the song and you're hearing that guitar solo. It's like, oh, wow.
Oh, there's a bit of wah in there, isn't there? Wah or special effects?
Oh, there's something going on. I'm going to have to do some research and listen to all this stuff over the next couple of days. So Great Vanzini's like me. He's a bassist and a guitar player.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's cool.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
yeah, we're in the money.
Awesome. Okay. Well, right. So I'm going to sign off because it's that time, and I don't want your phone going dead before we don't get an opportunity to say goodbye. Great Van Zanny, it's a pleasure you joining us. Kubrick Glover, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for supporting us. Arvin, again, you guys, just make it a little bit easier for Carl and I, and Simon. When Simon and I are doing a couple of shows, you guys jump in and offer some comments. If any of you guys are set up with a camera, and or either on Facebook Messenger, flick me a message and let me know, and see if you guys want to jump on and do a show with us, telling us a little bit about your musical background, what lights your guys' fires. So keep in touch, send us some messages. But in the meantime, we're going to wish you all well and keep safe while this global crisis is going on. And hopefully we can
I was going to mention, so
get this sorted.
Our 2 or 3 guests who were fortunate to have in the show, were they based in America, Canada, Australia, England?
So Great Van Zanny's North America. Arvin is North America, might be Canada,
wow.
I think. And Kubrick Glover is North America too. Forgive me,
nice.
guys, if I don't know, if I can't remember your cities. I'm sorry.
I just want to ask if I know that Trump's got his hands full. I know in America, Andrew and I talked about America being a country but confined to 50 states. Obviously, New York's a bit problematic, Louisiana, but do these guys feel okay, or they're going to ride through it, or are they on lockdown, or what?
Oh, well, that's a good point. Thank you very much, Carl, for highlighting that. So, Arvin's in Canada. So if you guys in the chat want to tell us what's happening, I think Canada is in lockdown. I think Trudeau closed the border a couple of days ago. Kubrick Glover's in Connecticut. So, hopefully your state legislation or your governor's securing your borders there in Connecticut. And Great Van Zanny, he told us where he was a couple of shows ago. But again, forgive me, guys, if I don't know. Sorry.
Well, I just want to make sure that they.
So Kubrick Glover's right next door to the border of New York. Gee, wow.
New York's having a hard time. Yeah. Well, it's just my branch manager company, and pretty sure your company's done the same thing. That we're not confined to borders or countries or race or creed. We're all in this together. The human race. And Paul talked about the principalities and the powers of the earth. The evil of that. So to make sure everybody's just safe out there.
Yeah. So Arvin's mostly locked down in Canada, which is good. You have to be. So we're in forced lockdown here too in New Zealand for 4 weeks. They could extend it. They're talking about maybe extending it. So, so Great Van Zanny's in Oregon. Everything
on the other side. Yeah, on the other side. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
Arvin's so California, then you got Oregon next, and then Washington State, then Canada.
Yeah.
Which would be Vancouver, British Columbia, on that west coast, on the west coast.
And Arvin's an hour outside of Toronto. Now, Toronto's a big city, so you stay safe. Stay safe,
Stay
Arvin.
The hell away.
Yeah. You don't go and buy any guitars or records in Toronto.
Yeah. Now, what we've learned in a short amount of time is, unfortunately, social isolation and distancing, unfortunately, as horrible as it is something we have to do.
It sucks. I'm the second day in this, and between you and I and the guys in the chat,
put on 5 kilos.
I just
it's hard to work out in your home.
Oh, it sucks, man. Another Another.
It's very Orwellian, very 1984. That movie, isn't it? Very, very Mad Max, very Batman. Remember Batman when they put that stuff in the waterways? All those movies that we loved, that we thought, oh, this is Hollywood. It's come back to haunt us. we are in the movie, The Matrix.
We're in Agenda 21 of the UN mandate for sustainable futures.
Oh.
All right.
All right. Look forward to the zombies.
Awesome. Hey, all you guys in the chat, always a pleasure.
It's actually,
Stay safe.
yeah, we are turning into zombies and animals. Oh no, they were known as them.
Oh, okay. I look forward to catching up with you guys. Take care.
Awesome.